Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your guest co-host, Kunath. Today, we're going to talk about UFC Kansas City, Carlos Prates versus Ian Garry. And my friends, it's going on this Saturday night live at the T-Mobile Center in the capital, the barbecue capital of the U.S., Kansas City, Missouri. And without further ado, let's get right down to business, because in this main event in the welterweight division, we got Carlos Prates. He's 21-6, taking on Ian Garry, who's 15-1. Currently, they got it. Ian Garry minus 130. The comeback on Carlos Prates is plus 110. I thought it was Prates, but I heard him pronounce it. It's Prates. That's what we're going to call him. And Kunath, I mean, this is an incredible matchup because Carlos Prates is one of these guys that, opposite of Ian Garry, who came into the UFC 5-0, 6-0, was green, had to develop, in the big show. This dude, Carlos Prates, comes into the UFC at 18-6. So he had already paid his dues, not to mention over 100 Muay Thai fights. So the difference in experience here is massive. And I know people are saying that this is a step up for Prates. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I'm going to give my breakdown in a sec. I'm very curious what my first-time guest and someone that I really like, Kunath, what do you think about this fight?
Not a step up in competition, maybe overall, because he's been there, done that, like you said, but definitely a step up in recent competition, right? Like the Mitch Ramirez's of the world, Trevin Giles, Neil Magny, the Leech, Charles Radke. I think that Ian Garry, we've seen Ian Garry beat Neil Magny, but I think Ian Garry's better than all of those guys. And I think that Ian Garry, I think we're on opposite sides of this. We talked about this pre-recording, or at least pre-live. We didn't know what side the other was on. You didn't look at my stuff. I didn't look at your stuff. I'm firmly on the Ian Garry side this week. So nice. I'll give my piece after I hear a little bit about how you're feeling about your man.
No. You told me you got Ian Garry. You can't back out now. Okay, tell us why.
Fair. I think we are going to see the MMA Twitter world turn on Carlos Prates and his cigarette smoking when he gets tired in the third, fourth, and fifth round. I think we're going to see a complete 180 because I don't think this guy is going to be able to land with that kind of power come round three. I don't think he's going to be able to defend takedowns that well. I know he did it against Neil Magny, but one thing you see in that Neil Magny fight and in the Trevin Giles fight, dude gets pushed up against the fence a lot, doesn't like that bad or that negative position when it comes to the clinch up against the fence. Ian Garry does good work there, and I think Ian Garry can do a good job of dragging him to the mat. I think he can get to his back. His back take is nasty. He hasn't been able to finish anything despite being under the chin with a couple of guys like Neil Magny, like Shavkat. But I think he finds himself in that position maybe more than once this week, and I think after the third round is when he pulls away. I think he finishes Prates late.
Yeah, listen, man, obviously, I respect your opinion, but I think the cigarette narrative is one of the biggest fake news narratives I've ever heard in all my years watching the sport. Yeah, maybe when he's 50 or 60, it's going to be a big deal. But like, if you know anything about Muay Thai culture, you know that the best Muay Thai guys on planet Earth that live in Thailand that have had over 100 Muay Thai fights and they go 5 rounds hard, these motherfuckers smoke cigarettes between rounds. Like, so that's just the culture. For Muay Thai fighters, especially the real guys, that train in Thailand, live in Thailand. Obviously right now he's in Brazil, but I'm saying before his MMA career, this guy was a very established and seasoned Muay Thai fighter. And that's just the style over there. So it's like, if some random American was smoking cigarettes, or like if you're fighting someone with Bilal's pace and you're smoking cigs, okay, then I'm kind of worried in the fourth and fifth round. And 9 times out of 10, it is a red flag that a fucking pro fighter smokes cigarettes. But in this case, I really could give two. You know what's about it.
I was joking. I don't think it's a big deal either.
Well, I'm glad that you're joking, but there's a lot of people that aren't joking. There's a lot of people that are putting stock into this like it's some big deal that's going to affect them right now. I don't think it's going to affect him at all. In fact, I think his cardio is very, very good. Show me one fight where he slowed down. In fact, let's look at his last loss against that Russian who was undefeated at the time. And this was in 2019. We're talking pre-COVID. We're talking, while Carlos was still paying his dues. And in the first 2 rounds, Buddy was able to take down Carlos Prates. And listen, Carlos has been a black belt for a while. Obviously, his wrestling is the weakness. Or was. I'm going to mention how it's gotten better, but at the time, the wrestling was the weakness, but the jiu-jitsu was never a weakness. This guy's very good at retaining his guard, good at attacking subs. And in that third round against the Russian, after very heavy grappling exchanges, the first 2 rounds, it was Carlos Prates that was sweeping the Russian. It was Carlos Prates that was taking his back. It was Carlos Prates that was full mounting him. And what do you think would have happened had there been 2 more rounds? Carlos Prates' win streak would be even longer than it is right now, which right now I believe it's 10 or 11 fights in a row, right? Most of them knockouts.
11 with 10 knockouts straight, I think.
And when we talk about Ian Garry, so you know how Ian Garry, he's been talking a lot of trash. I'm all about trash talk, but like, be funny, be witty. There's nothing original about Ian Garry's trash talk. In fact, when I listen to him talk, I have to turn it off after less than 2 minutes. You know, he was talking about how, Carlos the Quitter Prates, because back a long ass time ago in his like Muay Thai days, back when he'd like fight multiple times a day, not multiple times a year, multiple times a day, a week, a month, like he'd be fighting around the clock. You got to cut weight so many times. And yeah, Carlos had like a little injury TKO and it was kind of a bad look and this and that. Bro, this was before Ian Garry even made his first amateur fight. The different experience here, like I'm saying, Carlos comes into the UFC at 18-6. That's called paying your dues. Ian Garry comes in 5-0, 6-0. And like, if you're telling me like, these guys like Keenan Song are flooring you, but they just don't have the fight IQ to finish, what do you think is going to happen when Carlos Prates hurts Ian Garry and puts him in similar situations? Now, a lot of people love to bring up that Trevin Giles fight, and they also love to conveniently leave out the fact that Trevin Giles has early success against everyone he fights. Dricus Du Plessis.
Yeah.
Carlos Prates. So what's the big deal? But you know what they failed to mention, right, Kunath? They failed to mention that in Ian's debut against Jordan Williams, Jordan was treating this guy like a punching bag. And, obviously, but that was 3 years ago. He's just a kid. Okay, let's fast forward to that Jeff Neal fight. What happens anytime Ian Garry exits the pocket? Hands drop, chin raises, and most importantly, Kunath, he backs straight up. He doesn't turn an angle. He backs straight up. And from the debut against Jordan Williams to most recently against Jeff Neal, he pays for doing that. And there's big consequences if you do that against Carlos Prates. Now, I will concede that I thought the Jeff Neal fight was like a lot easier of a matchup than Ian Garry. Reason being is that Jeff Neal only knows one way. Jeff Neal's going to go forward. Jeff Neal's going to make you get into a fight with them, which like, okay, Carlos Prates is going to get his openings there. Whereas here, he's going to have to track down Ian Garry a little bit because Ian Garry likes to run around. He likes to point fight. So we're going to do a little bit of tracking down. It's going to be a slow start, but eventually, I'm telling you, when Ian Garry backs out the pocket with his hands down and his chin up and he goes straight back, Carlos is going to pick up on that. He's going to make reads. And I am all aboard the hype train of the fighting nerds. Look, it took me a little bit of time. I was skeptical. I was skeptical at first, but now I don't care how cool or how popular it is to be on their hype train. I'm on their hype train. I'm a believer in these guys. And like, not just the results we've been seeing from them inside the octagon, but take it back a step. If you pull up this documentary, kind of slash documentary type thing that John Gooden, the UK commentator for the UFC did. He goes to the Fighting Nerds gym in Brazil and interviews all of them, interviews the coach, and the coach has like an incredible philosophy, man. He's like, look, I got 60 fighters in my gym. I know I can't make all 60 of my fighters a UFC champion, but you know what I can do? I can make all 60 of my fighters the best versions of themselves. So you look back at that fight that Carlos Prates had against that Russian that I mentioned, where he did great in the third round, but the first 2 rounds he got grinded out. Well, look at the improvement in his takedown defense since that fight. Now he's very, very hard to take down. And yeah, man, I mean, like, I think people are overestimating the grappling ability of Ian Garry, where it's Carlos Prates that's been the black belt nearly 10 years. You look at that Contender Series fight where he got taken down, immediately recomposes his guard. Beautiful usage of the butterfly hooks. Butterfly sweeps him, gets back up to the feet, and destroys the guy. So because Ian Garry almost choked out MVP, respect to MVP, but what belt in Jiu-Jitsu's MVP? Blue belt? No, seriously. Blue belt? Like someone in the comments, let me know. What belt in Jiu-Jitsu's MVP? Blue belt? Carlos Prates has been a black belt like at least 10 years. I don't think Ian Garry is choking out anything here. And let me say this as well. the Shavkat fight. Shavkat has his way with him for 4 straight rounds. Ian has a moment in the 5th round. Now everyone's overblowing it, kind of like they did with Steve Erceg. I don't know what the deal is. Steve Erceg wins a round against Pantoja. Oh, now you're going to come out here and bet him against Brandon Moreno and Kai Kara France. Like, no, guys, people overblow little moments of success and losses. But ultimately, I just think that Carlos Prates has got something for Ian Garry. Like, they both have good 1-2s. Carlos Prates has a way better 1-2. They both got good step through knees. Carlos Prates has way better step through knees. Ian Garry's getting better on the ground. Carlos Prates is better on the ground, despite any misconceptions you might hear. So yeah, long story short, I'm going Carlos Prates to come out here and hashtag starch the cuck.
Have it trending on Twitter. Imagine if that trended. Right? If you got knocked out and that started trending. One thing I will say about the cardio is that it's more for me the unknown piece, right? Because I don't think the guy's seen a 3rd round in like his last 10 fights, right? It's 1st round knockout, 2nd round knockout. So that's where I think things could get dicey in the 3rd round, because Ian Garry, he could fight all day, right? I also think that Prates might have some trouble setting up that teep, right? He does a lot of that stabbing teep to the body, sets up a lot of his game off of that. Ian Garry exits the pocket in a straight line, but he does spend a lot of time kind of moving laterally, skirting around the outside, and those front kicks, it might be hard for him to find a home for him. So I think there's going to be a lot of clinch. I think Ian Garry's going to play it real safe early, because we saw MVP crack him with that right hand. We saw Shavkat crack him with a right hand. If he does that with Prates, real quick, put down. I think Prates is a bigger punch.
I'm sorry to Kunath, I'm sorry to cut you off.
You're good.
You said we saw MVP crack him. You said we saw Shavkat crack him. Guess who else we're going to see him crack him?
Yeah. I mean, if Prates does hit him cleanly like that, if he lands cleanly, I don't think he gets back to his feet. I don't think he's going to be able to. Because like you said, even with Kanan Song, that was a fight IQ issue. He could have ended the fight. I think, what did he do? He tried to like jump to his back or something instead of just following up with strikes. Just sloppy, right? So Prates has that killer instinct. He might just let him up, though, like he did the leech. A lot of these fighting nerds guys just like let them up, right? So I could see that happening, but I'm still going to go with Ian Garry. I think that he'll be able to slow the pace. I think he'll get to the clinch. I think he'll get Prates to the ground. Prates might be a black belt, right? But I don't know. Crazier things have happened in MMA. He might be able to submit him with like a ninja choke if he's looking for a single leg up against the fence. I saw him kind of like threaten that against Neil Magny, and with those long arms, that's probably going to be there. But I still think that Ian Garry just might give us a little bit more in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. But time will tell. We will see.
Yeah, I'm not buying any cardio narratives here, but I will tell you this from a market perspective. I mean, I bet Ian Garry at -150 against Gabe Green. That is what you call value. Yeah. So around the same price against Carlos Prates, I don't think so. And the first ever time I get dog money on a fighting nerd, say less. They have me there. Hey, let's move on, because we're going to sit on this main event forever. So
yeah.
Co-main event of the evening in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Mingyang Zhang, he's 18-6, taking on Anthony Lionheart Smith, who's 37-21. Currently, they got it Mingyang Zhang -425. The comeback on Anthony Lionheart Smith is +325. Allegedly, the retirement fight for Anthony Lionheart Smith, and fighting, a guy who has nowhere near the level of experience. But that being said, very, very dangerous. And Mingyang Zhang has stood out. He comes into the road to UFC against this Tuco Tokos guy. And you seen that knockout before?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Kunath, let me ask you off the top of your head, what do you think the odds were on that fight? Don't look it up. Just guess.
I would assume it was probably like, he might have been the slight dog, because Tuco Toko's fighting out of, I think it was like the UK or something, like a more known gym. So he might be the slight dog, because Zhang's a WLF Works kind of guy, and they normally don't translate.
So you're close. He was a dog, but he was like a fucking +500 dog. It was like, yeah, this dude is gonna come out, because he lost to like Askar Mozharov when he was like a teenager and shit. So like,
he was like 19 or something.
Right, exactly. Remember like my boy Song Yadong was like 23 for like 5 years straight, and he was 19 for the 7 years prior. So I'm just saying, like, some of these guys have weird losses earlier in their career when, like, this kid's been fighting since he was 16, Mingyang Zhang, right? So,
Right.
but I think you could say similar things about Anthony Smith. He's been finished. Another trivia off the top of your head, how many times do you think Anthony Smith's been finished? Guess.
In the UFC or just overall?
No, overall, full career.
12 times.
Almost. I think it's 12
15.
knockout losses, but it's actually 16 finished losses. So, but anyways, go ahead. Who you got? What do you think is going to happen here?
So I broke this down on my channel, and if you go and you watch, or you go through the comments, it's hysteria. Because I came out and said, Mingyang Zhang wins first round knockout, very possible. If he doesn't win by first round knockout, he's not going to win. He only wins in the first round, right? Now, like we talked about off air, Anthony Smith hasn't been finished in the first round for a very, very long time. So if he does escape the first round, if he slows the pace, if he makes it to that second round, I think Anthony Smith takes over, because I don't know what Mingyang Zhang's going to look like after the first 5 minutes of this fight, especially with how hard he's willing to throw. You look at that fight against Bredesen Himbeiro, he's getting touched up, but then he lands big left hook, follows that up with a right. Bredesen Himbeiro's dead, right? Tuco Tokos combos him up. Tuco Tokos is dead. Those guys haven't fought the same caliber of opponent that Anthony Smith has had. And I think the line is I don't think it's too wide. I talked about this in my video. It's not too wide because of how it will look if Zhang wins. If he knocks him dead in the first 3 minutes of this fight, he's going to look every bit the minus 500.
Oh no, we lost my boy Kunath. Kunath, when you come back, you got a spot here. But until he comes back, I'm gonna say what I gotta say regarding this matchup. I'm gonna remove him real quick, and when he's ready, he can come back. And I gotta remove this this little thing right here. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm guessing he's figuring his shit out real quick. That's okay. That's okay. We're good. We're good, y'all. We're good, y'all. So once I see that he's back, he's still frozen on my frame, I'll bring him back. But right now, let me talk about this Anthony Smith fight. Basically, guys, I hear what Kunath is saying regarding that. Okay, every time this guy's been past round one, he's lost. But at the same time, how old is this guy, man? Like, he is 26. Okay, so these are things that you can easily fix, man. And also, Anthony Smith doesn't necessarily fight at the kind of pace that is going to force this guy. This ain't no Marab pace or anything. You back?
I'm here.
Okay, cool. Give me 1 second. Let me fix everything and get back to where we were.
Yeah, put me back on the left.
Yeah, I got you, fam. Give me 1 sec.
I don't want to be here anymore. Put me back over there. Okay, there we go.
All right, keep going. You're talking about you have suspect predictions about this man past round one because he's never won a fight past round one. But I was saying while you were gone that he's also 26 years old, and these are the kind of things you can fix. And Anthony Smith doesn't necessarily fight at a hellacious pace. All right, keep going.
Yeah, very fair. Very fair. I think it's obviously round one Zhang or Anthony Smith on the live line. That's where I'm at with it. I would not be surprised to see this guy go out there, show Anthony Smith little to no respect at striking range, let his hands go, land that big, powerful shot that puts him down. And now that I'm thinking about it, with Tokos, was it an elbow that put him down? Was it like a lead elbow, if I'm remembering it correctly?
That was the Ozzy Diaz fight.
Ozzy Diaz. It was like a left elbow, quick, as soon as Ozzy Diaz closed distance. So I think it's Zhang round one. If it's not Zhang round one, great live betting spot for Anthony Smith. And I think everybody kind of feels that way. I don't know if anybody's making a hard stance for Anthony Smith. They can acknowledge both sides, but I think it's round one for Zhang, or Smith by submission, maybe in the second round, if he's able to drag him down to the mat.
Look, if Anthony Smith does get that opportunistic finish, it's not going to surprise me because he's done it so many times. But that being said, I got to go Mingyang Zhang, and I don't think it's just contingent on a first round finish, because Anthony Smith's pace isn't high enough to drag this guy to the depths of hell. It's more so, can Anthony take that ass whooping up front, and then kicking someone's ass is a very taxing thing. Go see Shane Carwin versus Brock Lesnar. So yeah, there could be an opportunistic finish for Smith, of course, but I think that the odds are right here. Go ahead. What's up?
Do you think a 33-year-old Anthony Smith would beat Ming? Would you pick a 33-year-old Anthony Smith in this spot, or would
How
you
old is
still
he?
go with Zhang?
How old is Smith right now?
He's 36.
Okay, so you're saying 3 years ago. Let me see
Yeah,
what his for. And when you ask me this question, are we talking Mingyang Zhang from 3 years ago, or are we talking current form Mingyang Zhang?
current.
Okay, let me see what we were up to 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, what year are we in? 25. So 3 years ago in 22. I mean,
You're getting like a Ryan Spann fight, I think, at that point.
shit, bro. In like 2023, I was at his Johnny Walker fight when he's like fighting, PTSD from his home invasion, asking why he's attacking his family. So I don't know, bro. I don't know. But either way, I got Mingyang Zhang, and it doesn't have to be first round for me. I think you can beat him down first round, finish him in the second. Like once Anthony starts getting to that turtle position, he's slick in terms of like ref will be like move fighter, and he'll just move a slight inch, then take more of a beating, move fighter, move just a little bit more, take more of a beating. Like, so I could see it being something like that too, but either way, let's move on. Now, featured bout in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Giga Chikadze. He's 15-4, taking on David Onama, who's 13-2. Currently, they got it Onama -170. The comeback on Giga's +145. Listen, man, when Giga first came into the UFC, man, he was hot. He was on a streak, man. It was looking like, if he had beat Calvin Kattar that night, it's either a title shot against Volkanovski or it's one fight away from a title shot against Volkanovski. And man, that loss was so demoralizing. It was kind of even in that first round until Calvin Kattar went for that disgusting takedown where he pushes him up against the fence, uses the momentum against him, slams him down, and that one grappling exchange took all the gas and fight out of Giga, man. And it's like, dude, like, so here's my thing, because Onama, I like him. I also like the fact that Onama, for a kid as young as him, is so battle tested. Like, comes into the UFC, has that incredible war with Mason Jones, the incredible war with Nate Landwehr, hands Gabriel Moscatino Santos, his first octagon defeat. Don't come at me with no Lerone Murphy. I love Lerone Murphy, but I thought that Santos beat Lerone Murphy.
Santos did beat Lerone Murphy.
His first real octagon defeat was against David Onama in a fight that Santos was doing his thing early. But I'm just saying, like, Onama's battle tested, man. Like, I remember laying -150 on him against Gabriel Benitez, and he smoked him too, But the thing about it is here with Giga. So yeah, Giga's a gasser. The longer the fight goes, you got to favor Onama, especially if Onama can get some grappling going. But like, is it going to surprise you at all if Giga comes out here that first round? Like, we've seen Onama's vulnerable defensively early, man. And sometimes he likes to fight with his ego. He likes to bite down and brawl. And Giga can kickbox, man. Giga can kickbox for real. It's just with the kick heavy style, I have a suspicion that obviously that's a lot more taxing than if he was mainly hands. Kicking takes a lot of energy. And this guy, whenever grappling exchanges are involved, that also taxes his gas tank. So I see more past the victory for Onama. It's just that, I mean, like I said, are you going to be surprised if Onama comes out here and tries to bang with his ego with Giga and it's a really close fight, closer than the line indicates? I'm not going to be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Onama come out and bang. One thing I talked about was like Onama only goes to war. Right, like that's almost every David Onama fight except maybe the Garrett Armfield fight, and I'm pretty sure they knew each other or something like that. So
yeah, they fought on amateurs.
Yeah, so he looked like he didn't want to like hurt him too much based on what I was
seeing. And then after they fought on amateurs, they trained together, and then they fought in the UFC. So yeah, you're right.
So, but outside of that, every David Onama fight is war, and I love David Onama in a war against Giga Chikadze. The only worry would be if he starts getting lit up with that body kick, because Giga can split you in half with that body kick. But like you said, if it gets to the clinch at all, I think that's when David Onama takes over. Maybe not even with his takedowns, but just being nastier in the clinch, like elbows, uppercuts, getting that collar tie around the head and throwing uppercuts, knees to the body, and just making them work. And like you said, Giga, like he burst on the scene, was lighting guys up, had a couple of like favorable matchups, but then Cub Swanson dispatched of him, Edson Barbosa dispatched of him, but Giga's gotten old fast, right? Like, what is he now? Like 36 years old. He showed up like 30 years old. And
but the thing about it is, man, it's like, okay, but look, the champ in that division is 36, 37. To me, it's more so Giga's had how many surgeries, and prior to his MMA career, this guy's got like a long kickboxing background. Right. So it's like, you know, he's an older 36.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of miles on him. So I think that David Onama, despite being very hittable, maybe defensively irresponsible, I still think that he's just going to make it too gritty, too nasty, too much of a dogfight for Giga Chikadze to, because at range, if they have a pretty fight, Giga's going to light him up. He's too smooth, right? And he hits too hard when he's given the time and space to throw freely. But I don't think David Onama does that. He eats up that space, makes him work. And I think he finishes him late in this one, probably like the second or third round, either with ground and pound. I wouldn't be surprised to see like an arm triangle, like one of those like strong guy submissions, you know, from top position. But I love David Onama, and especially that he's coming in at under 2-1. I think David Onama might be the best bet on the card.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it just has to be a pretty fight for Onama to get lit up. I actually think there's a situation where Onama gets lit up anyways early on. Giga gasses because that style is so goddamn taxing with all the kicks. Onama takes over second, third round. Now, in the past, like when I bet on Nate Landwehr against Onama plus 270, plus 280, I don't remember. It was a crazy price. It was the opposite. Onama, huge first round, and Nate took over the next two. But like, the thing about Onama, like we've talked about, man, he's so battle tested. Like all these opponents he's had are real tough. And even that last one, again, you know, he had a really outmatched opponent. He got dropped in the first round. I like how he answered that. I like how he returned the favor, man. And, you know, people I respect were saying that Romero won the first round 10-9. You know, all three judges scored it for Onama. And I disagree. Look, I get where they're coming from because Romero may have won like 4 minutes of the round, but look, both guys got dropped, right? Onama got dropped and Romero got dropped. But here's the difference. When Onama got dropped by Romero, instead of following up, Romero just tries to take his back. And you know you're not going to just choke out a guy like Onama. One thing about Onama, he's so damn tough. Like, right?
You got to kill him.
You got to kill him. You got to kill him. We agree on that. If we don't agree on anything else on this podcast, we agree that Onama is tough as nails and you got to kill him. But the reason I scored that first round for him against Romero is because when it was his turn to land his knockdown, I mean, those follow-up shots were vicious. That's the last thing that the judges see. And he was the closest one to finishing the fight. So, yeah, I scored that round for him. But look, we can talk about all that stuff. Bottom line, I think it's going to be sketchy early. But if Onama's still there, I think he takes over, and I think he drowns Giga. So, I'm with you.
Agreed.
Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Michel Demolidor Pereira. He's 31-12, taking on Abus Magomedov, who's 27-6. Currently, they got at Pereira minus 140. The comeback on Abus is plus 120. Interesting fight because obviously Abus, you know, he had some kind of embarrassing fights early in his UFC career, but you know who also had some embarrassing fights early in their UFC career? Michel Pereira. So both these guys have been paying a lot of dues. They're meeting each other at an interesting time. How you see this one going now?
So I have a question for you before I start.
Of course.
Do you think that Michel Pereira is on gas watch? Because I have a lot of people telling me that, oh, he's going to gas in the third round, but that hasn't really been the case for a long time outside of the Fluffy fight, but Fluffy does that to everybody. Do you think if this fight gets extended, Michel Pereira is going to be the more tired fighter?
Because just on the sole basis of it getting extended, just on that basis? No. But
I feel the same way.
But if Abus, okay, one thing you got to understand about guys like Fluffy and guys like Merab, you know, it's one thing. It's admirable if a guy attempts 10 takedown attempts in a fight. It's admirable if a guy attempts 20 takedown attempts in a fight. That's like that's ridiculous, right? Okay. Anthony Fluffy attempted 29 takedowns. Merab attempts like 50 takedowns. It's just those are different styles. So I will concede that Abus has scored 10 takedowns his last two fights combined, but that's not anywhere near the pace of a Fluffy or of a Merab. So unless like the grappling pace is so heavy, I don't think that it's automatic. Like no matter what happens, if Michel hits round 3, he's going to gas. I think that's fake news.
Okay, I'm glad you feel the same way. I needed some validation there because people were telling me, "Oh, he's going to gas out as soon as it hits the late second, third round." And I thought that was just crazy. I think
Well,
that
because he did that against Fluffy Hernandez, who has like the most weaponized cardio in the history of the middleweight division. Like, you
yeah,
guys got to put context on each matchup, you know?
yeah, I totally agree. I like Michel Pereira at this price. I've noticed money coming in on Abus Magomedov, and he's got the momentum. He's coming off of back-to-back wins. Finished Bruno Ferreira in the third round with that arm triangle. Although I feel like the ref kind of assisted in that moment. Like I think he was telling Bruno Ferreira like, "Don't hit the back of the head" or something, and Ferreira's like, "Oh, okay." And then Abus just steps over into mount like during that little exchange. But he was in control. He was in the driver's seat. But I think that Michel Pereira is just uber talented. I don't fault him for losing to Fluffy. I think most guys at 185 pounds are going to be losing to Fluffy outside of that fight. And he hasn't been matched up with the best guys, but he's dispatching a guys quickly. Iho Potieria, Michal Lexichuk. Andre Petrosky, right? He's packing these guys up pretty quickly. I don't think he finishes Magomedov, but I think just athletically, he's going to be a lot for Magomedov to deal with. I think at striking range, he does a really good job of managing the distance and kind of frustrating guys because everybody has this idea that he's going to be like 100 miles per hour. And then the fight starts and he does a really good job of like starting and stopping. He manages the pace and the range really well. And I think that's going to give Magomedov trouble. I don't fault Magomedov for losing to guys like Kyle Bohalio and Sean Strickland. But
It's
I
how he lost.
It's how he lost, right? And like you said, it was kind of embarrassing. Like he didn't give a good account of himself in either of those fights. With Sean Strickland, he did for about 2 minutes and then he fell off a cliff. But I think Michel Pereira just athletically is a little bit too much. I think he hits a little bit harder. I think he's got the better chin. I think if it hits the third round, despite what people have been telling me, I think that he'll be the fresher fighter come the third round. And I don't think Magomedov's going to be able to take him down very much. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not as passionate about this one as you are, but I do agree with you. Because the thing about Abus, firstly, he's a very talented guy. You know, he was doing his thing in the World Series of Fighting, PFL, all that. You know, shout out to my boy Lewis, put the guns down Taylor with that devastating knockout. You know, going out on top as champion. You love to see it. Shout out Lou Taylor, but listen, man, Abus has been doing his thing, and you love to see it for a talented guy. You know, came into the UFC, took some setbacks, but had a couple of nice finishes too. You know, the Dustin Stoltzfus fight, had a hard-fought battle with Bruno Hulk, and man, you know, got the finish there against a very, very dangerous guy. And there were points in that fight where he might have been finished himself, Abus, and he overcame adversity, which I really was happy about. And you know, the Worley Alves. Yeah, the Worley Alves fight, he showed me he could put together a 3-round game plan. But Michel Pereira, he kind of brings things to the table that like other guys can't do. I'm not just talking about like the backflips, but like, bro, that stabbing front kick, that stabbing front kick is straight up a dagger to the gut. And like you see the looks on these guys' faces, like the fight just completely leaves them. And so to me, the big question is what kind of pace does Abus fight at? And if he does fight at a torrid, nonstop, trying to emulate Merab and Fluffy, is he going to gas himself out doing that? Because I mean, we've seen this guy doesn't, you know, he doesn't have the best gas tank either. So, but then on the feet, it'll be kind of interesting too, because I'd say both of them are very dangerous, but Abus is a bit more on the chinnier side. So I'm curious what kind of risks Abus would be willing to take standing. And then, although there's not much to take away from the Fluffy fight, one thing I will take away is the toughness of Pereira. He could have packed it in long before, what was it? The fifth round or the fourth round? I forget. It's been a while. But long before the end of the fight when it ended, right? Like he could have quit way long ago. And he got up from a few takedowns too. So like I'm saying, if he gets up from a few takedowns here, I don't see that same cardio from Abus where like you get up from a Fluffy Hernandez takedown, guess what? He's right back on your legs. You know, you stuff that. Oh, look, he's back on your legs again. You know, you fucking go through the biggest scramble ever. You make him work so hard. You finally disengage. Oh, look, he's back on your legs again. Whereas Abus, you get up a couple times, you defend a few. I'm curious if he's got that relentlessness to keep trying like Fluffy. I'm not convinced. Until I see it, I'm going to take Michel Demolidor Pereira.
Agreed.
Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Randy Rude Boy Brown. He's 19-6, taking on Nick Dalby, who's 23-5-1. And currently, yo, my boy Meticulous put two little red things on Dalby's face. Do you see that? What is that?
I can't see it. No, I don't see it.
Does Dalby not have two little red things on his face? Is that just on my computer?
It looks like the shadow on his forehead, like a light was right here, and it just looks pretty red. But I don't see.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay,
Yeah.
No, it looks pretty cool. I was like, damn, it's like he got hit here and here, but not here. But anyways, guys, big respect to both of these guys. Look, I'm not gonna call these guys OGs, but I'm gonna call them, established, battle-tested vets. That's what they are, man. Like, both these guys came into the UFC and have been paying insane amounts of dues. I mean, you're talking about a guy in Dalby comes into the UFC. His first UFC fight is in Brazil against Zaleski. You know what I mean? It was both of their debuts. Guess who wins? Dalby gets a split decision win against Zaleski in Brazil in his debut. And one thing about Dalby that people don't talk about is the physique transformation. Like, my God. If you go pull up Dalby's fights against Till, against Zaleski, against Peter Sabata, against Zach Cummings. Well, before I talk about the physique, there was something else in common in a lot of those fights. He's getting floored early in every single one of those fights. Zach Cummings, I think it was a head kick drop. Peter Sabota dropped him. Darren Till hit him with an uppercut. Like, these guys are flooring him in round one. And like back then, Dalby, like, he looked like a chubby dude. Like, he looked kind of fat, man. And like, but he was always like that tough dude where like take that ass whooping up front, have a big third round. But so he gets released from the UFC, right? He goes to Cage Warriors. He had a good fight with my boy Carlo Pedersoli. I know some of y'all remember that name, but that was a great fight on Cage Warriors. You got to check that out. And, he had that fight with, I think, that Ross Houston kid where they're like slipping all over the mat. There's like blood everywhere. They don't even get to finish the fight because there's so much blood. They just call it a no contest, I'm pretty sure.
Whoa, and, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, dude, like there's blood. These guys are like ice skating on the mat. You know what I mean? Like there was that much blood, that they couldn't even fight. So they stop it. But and then he won a couple more fights, gets back into the UFC, and man, his physique transformation has been ridiculous, dude. Like, look at these last few fights. The shape Dalby's in is not the same guy. And for a guy who's 40 now, I mean, he's been harvesting the garden of life fruits and vegetables in a way that I don't think we've ever seen before. So lots of respect for Dalby. But one thing I want to say is that certain themes that were prevalent early in his career, still remain now. Like his very last fight against Renat Fakhretdinov, everybody's so mad at Renat, because of the Leal fight. So now they're acting like Renat's like, robbing fighters in other fights too, like the Dalby fight. Bro, that shit was no fucking robbery. In round one, Renat drops Nicolas Dalby. In round two, it's a little closer, but Renat clearly wins that round. Yeah, give Dalby round three. That's 29-28 Renat. People were acting like that shit was some robbery. Guys, the Leal fight is the one you should express your rage towards, not the Dalby versus Renat fight. That's just my opinion. But as far as Randy Brown's concerned, he's one of these kids that came into the UFC, like 6-0, 7-0, had to learn on the job, but had these physical attributes and has been fighting serious competition since day one. I mean, this guy's already been in there with Bilal Muhammad, like back when they were both prospects, been in there with the Luques, been in there with everybody, and I love the career progression for Randy Brown. I feel like although he's still not where I want him to be, I thought by now he'd be in the top 10 already because he kind of like loses that key fight right when he gets that step up. But man, I still believe in his talent. I still believe in his skills. And I thought that last fight against Brian Battle, dude, that first round, Randy Brown looked amazing. Like, dude,
yeah, jabs, he looked great early.
Like the way he was ripping the body lock takedowns. And, a lot of people have, call certain people weight bullies. My definition of a weight bully is different than everyone else's definition of a weight bully. Most people's definition of a weight bully is, oh, this guy's big for the weight class. He's a weight bully. For me, it's like, if you can make the weight, I don't consider you a weight bully. You know what I consider a weight bully, Kunath? I consider Brian Battle a weight bully.
Whoa.
What? When you come in 175 pounds for an 170 pound fight and your strategy is to pin the guy up against the fence and use that weight, that is blatant cheating. I'm not convinced he even won that fight, but bottom line, I just think Randy got screwed there. If Brian had made the weight, like that fight was a game of inches. It was a split decision, right? Those 5 extra pounds made the difference. You tell me if he would have made weight that Randy wouldn't have been fatiguing in the in those spots
really
where the
point.
much heavier man is leaning on him. But that could be a similar concern here because Dalby does like to lean on guys and kind of overwhelm them a bit. I think the difference, however, is that the range of a Bryan Battle is actually one of the few guys that can match Randy Brown. They're like around the same height. You know what I'm saying? Whereas Dalby is, I think they got him listed 6 feet. He ain't no 6 feet. He's like 5'10", 5'11". Randy, they got him listed 6'3". I think he's more 6'4", 6'5". So I don't see Dalby having the same success that the weight bully Bryan Battle had. And I also don't see Dalby doing any kind of cheating coming in at 175 pounds. Look, I might not be a fan of the things that Dalby said recently because Dalby's never talked trash his entire career. And then before this fight, he just came out and called Randy Brown a cheater, which is like, wait, what? Like
for what? Do you know what?
For eye pokes, I think, which like he's not even the biggest eye poker around. He's just a long ass dude. So it's, when you close distance, you might run into some fingers, but it's not like blatant, like, John Jones, it's just, it's not blatant in my eyes. But anyways, bottom line, keep this man at the end of your jab, nice straight punches, rip to the body, minimize the clinch exchanges. And, people say Dalby's never been finished. Yeah, fake news. I'm pretty damn sure Jesse Ronson finished him. And he's also been dropped a multitude of times. Now 40 years old, I think Randy Brown's going to be the first official man to finish Nicolas Dalby.
That.
And I'm gonna call a straight right hand down the pipe, knockout, out cold, 50K bonus. Randy Brown, you're back in the win column, kid.
You think it's going to be like that Muslim Salikov fight where he just starts him with that piston of a right hand, just so clean.
That was ridiculous.
The way that he
from
fell
time to time, Randy's going to like show you glimpses of brilliance. It's just from other times to time, you're like, Randy, do a little more. Randy, get off the fence. Randy, stop fucking around, But if we can get past that, hopefully that last fight, he took a lot from him, comes in here locked in. And if we get the best version of Randy Brown, I think he can school Nick Dalby.
I think so too. I think the only way that Nicolas Dalby wins the fight is by holding him up against the cage for 3 minutes around and landing like knees to the thigh, maybe the body, maybe some just like little shots to the head. But I don't think at range he has anything for Randy Brown. Rude Boy is too long. He's too fast. He's too slick. He can extend those combinations. He can catch him on the way in. He can make him pay in the clinch if he is able to maybe land a knee up the middle here and there. But I don't think Nicolas Dalby's dangerous enough. I don't think he's going to be able to take him down. I like what you said about Randy Brown fighting everybody as well, because that didn't include like guys like Massaranduba and Jack Della Maddalena and Chaos Williams when he was all the hotness and Randy Brown styled on him for 3 rounds, right? Like I think that there's too much firepower coming from Randy Brown. I think Nicolas Dalby is a little bit too, I guess you would say, like meat and potatoes, right? The approach is too basic. I think Randy Brown can work some angles, work his boxing, and just kind of float on him and have fun out there. And, I don't think that Nicolas Dalby can really put a stamp on the rounds the way that Randy Brown could. I do like the KO call, though. I didn't really consider that angle. I thought this would be 15 minutes, 30-27 for Randy Brown, but he might be able to catch him. He might be able to catch that chin on the way in.
Do you give Dalby any split decision equity?
No. I thought watching live, I thought he beat Rinat Fakhretdinov, right? Upon the rewatch, I could see what you're saying. The Carlos Leal Rinat Fakhretdinov, worst robbery I've ever seen. But I don't think that Nicolas Dalby can win a split decision here. I think especially if it ends up turning into that kind of fight where he's just holding him up against the fence, I think the crowd is going to get antsy because there are a lot of bangers lower on the card. So I think the crowd's going to be all amped up by the time these two guys fight. So if he's sitting there holding him against the fence and 90 seconds rip off the clock, the ref's going to be like, all right, fellas, let's get some space.
Yeah. Now, before we move on to the next fight, I just got to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Bet105. What book does minus 105 odds on major sports, no KYC, and boosted odds in MMA? That's right. Bet105. My friends, this weekend at UFC Kansas City, my friends at Bet105 got a special offer for you. If you're going to parlay 2 of the biggest favorites on the card, Damon Blackshear and Jaqueline Amarim, Bet105 is going to offer you a 20% boost on their odds. So currently, if you're just to parlay them, it'd be around minus 300-ish. But with this 20% boost, the odds come down less than -250. Now you add that to a parlay and you might get a nice little return there. Also, split decision insurance. Last week, if you bet on Sumu Derji, you were probably shocked that fight went to a split decision. Now, thank God you got your money back. But let's say they score that for Mitch Raposo. With every other book, you lose in that spot. With Bet 105, at least you're going to get 25% cash back if you lose the split decision. Hey, that's better than nothing. So guys, make sure you go to bet105.ag, use my promo code HALFTHEBATTLE, deposit $100 and get $50 in free bets at bet105.ag. Use my promo code HALFTHEBATTLE. Now let's get back to the show. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Ikram Aliskerov. He's 15-2, taking on Andre Muniz, who's 24-6. Currently, they got it. Ikram Aliskerov -500. The comeback on Andre Muniz is +375. Listen, man, I'm not one to use the term robbery often, but I'm going to go ahead and say this. You were talking about the Leal fight being, a huge robbery, which I obviously agree with. But you want to know what was a big robbery? Do you know what I'm going to mention was a big robbery?
It's Andre Muniz against who was it? Was it Brad Tavares?
No, it was.
Who am I thinking of?
It was Iron Turtle, Jun Young Park.
That's who it was.
That fight was a disgusting robbery. And I try, people like to throw around the term robbery all the time. And I always try to, look into why the judges score it that way. I try to, play the devil's advocate if I can. There ain't playing no devil's advocate with this. That was disgusting. I was appalled. I'm shocked.
I remember what you mean, yeah.
To quote Deontay, to this day, I'm shocked about that score. Now, that being said, when Muniz first came into the UFC, first of all, his level of jiu-jitsu, I mean, one doesn't simply tap out Jaqueline, let alone break his arm. That's all I have to say regarding that. I don't care what stage of Jacare's career he was in. You submit Jacare and break his arm.
Especially from how he got there, too. Like, from the back, looked like he was falling off the top. Nasty.
Shit was crazy, man. And, it's funny. You ever seen Scarface? Of course you have, right? Sorry, you didn't say yes. Yes?
No, I tried to watch it when I was younger and I got bored. I've never seen Scarface.
Fuck, bro. I'll pretend you never said that, but watch it again sometime. But anyways, for the fans that have seen Scarface, y'all remember when Tony kills, the communist Emilio Rebenga, and then he gets brought into the boss Lopez.
Spoiler alert. No, I'm just kidding.
And like Lopez, he thanks him for killing Rebenga. He gives him the briefcase and all that. He's like, man, we're so grateful for your work, blah, 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 whatever. And Tony Montana was like, that was fun. Like in terms of like this was like a brutal, devastating mission where tons of people died, all this shit. Tony's like, that was fun. So Lopez's response, like he looks over to Omar, he's got his hands up like this. He was like, that was fun. That was fun. Like that's the kind of guy we're dealing with. So from now on, whenever I got to put emphasis on something, I got to put my hands up like that. You know what I'm saying? Shout out Scarface, one of my all-time favorite movies. But listen, man, when this dude Muniz came to the UFC, unbelievable jiu-jitsu. That blast double really developed. You saw in the Eric Anders fight. But what I don't like about Muniz is he has not evolved at all. I've seen zero evolution in his game whatsoever. The fact that he got the win in that last fight is just so disgusting to me. I can't justify it in any way, shape, or form. And then with Aliskerov, he's taken a couple knockout losses to a former champ in Hobart Whitaker and Hamza Chimaev. But like, man, I don't think that Muniz possesses anywhere near the threat as those guys. Not to mention Muniz has been getting like tapped out by but look, Brendan Allen's a black belt, Paul Craig's a black belt, but Muniz on paper is like way above those guys credential wise. Obviously when punches are involved, completely different, but yeah, I just don't like the trend. I don't like where Muniz is trending. And Aliskerov, this is a good matchup for him because his Sambo is good enough to keep this fight standing, stop all the attacks of Muniz. And honestly, as Muniz gasses and Muniz maybe starts to flop to his back, don't be surprised if Aliskerov gets on top of Muniz and has success there. But where I really think it's at is I think Aliskerov is going to let his hands go and starch Muniz, similar to another Russian who's up a weight class named Azamat Mirzakhanov, the way he starched Muniz. I think it's going to be like that. So give me Aliskerov.
Yep, I Wholeheartedly agree. I was banging the Muniz drum early on, especially after he submitted Jacare. I was like, oh, this guy's got the best jiu-jitsu in the division. He's a problem for everybody. But then he ran into guys who had really, really good MMA jiu-jitsu, and then we saw what happened. But I totally agree. I think on the feet, he's completely outgunned. I don't think he really has much for Aliskerov at range. I don't think he's going to be able to take him down either. Ikram Aliskerov was like somebody who they looked like they were like setting up for, maybe potentially fighting for a title in a handful of fights. And then Robert Whitaker, he uppercuts him in the Middle East, and that was that. But those are his only two losses. It's Robert Whitaker, Hamzat Chimaev, and both times he was caught with an uppercut and he got knocked out. And I said this on my video. I don't know if Andre Muniz has ever thrown an uppercut in his life. I don't even know if he's thrown them on mitts. So I'm going to take Ikram Aliskerov here. I think Ikram Aliskerov by knockout in the first or second round is the most likely outcome here. I'd really be shocked to see it go any other way.
Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Matt Schnell. He's 16-9, taking on Jimmy Flick, who's 17-8. Currently, they got Schnell minus 185. The comeback on Flick is plus 160. Both these guys have retired before. Most recently, Matt Schnell retired. And, shout out to my boy Cody Durden with that nasty ninja choke. Got the infamous double tap. You love to see it. And my boy Cody's got a fight coming up against the young stud Jose Ochoa in Atlanta, Georgia, June 14th. So make sure y'all tune into that. But, yeah, my boy Cody fought both these guys. He whooped on Flick, but got caught with a once-in-a-lifetime flying triangle. And then he whooped on Schnell. He whooped on Schnell and tapped him out. So I asked him his opinion. He's going with Schnell on this one. He thinks that Schnell is just going to be able to keep, fight smart, jab, keep the standing, calf kicks, pick him apart, possibly get a knockout. But I was like, dude, so who do you think has got the better chin between the two? He's like, no comment. And I was also like, I mean, could you not see, Schnell doing his infamous double tap on Flick? And he's like, maybe. So, like the thing about Flick, man, is like he's a throwback fighter in a sense. He's only got one path to victory, but that one path to victory is fucking so dangerous. Like, so 17 of his wins, right? Or 17 wins in total, right? Out of those 17 wins, 15 of them are submissions. You know what I'm saying? So it's like he is a one-trick pony. I don't want to say that because he's got triangles, he's got arm triangles, he's got guillotine. It's not a one-trick pony. I'm just saying the approach is very singular. You're not gonna get too rocked by Jimmy Flick's shots. Now with Matt, on the other hand, way better hands, way better kicks, decent. Like Matt's good. Matt actually has everything I look for in a fighter, except a chin, and that's a big deal. And also now that he's retired, before I'm questioning the heart. I know some people are like, someone commented on the video I did with Clint talking about, oh, we put too much emphasis in the odds, and it's a fucking betting show. I mean, like, what do you say, bro? We're supposed to put emphasis in the odds. The odds matter. I don't know who's going to win this fight. I'm going to pick Schnell because I think he's better. But again, if Schnell double taps, are you going to be surprised? I'm not. If Schnell goes out cold, are you going to be surprised? Like, I know Jimmy's not known for his striking. I was in attendance. I believe it was either Atlanta or Nashville, Tennessee, when Schnell fought this dude named Hector Sandoval, right? Hector Sandoval's on top of him. I'm talking 2-inch hammer fists. I'm not talking woo. I'm not talking no shit like that. Like, do you remember when Paddy Pimblett fought Tony Ferguson and destroyed him the first round, but then gassed out in that third round? You know why, right? Because when he was on top of Tony, it was like ground and pound from the heavens, like full extension, right, trying to kill the guy. Whereas Hector Sandoval with Matt Schnell was like, boom, boom, boom. Oh, out cold. Like, damn, eyes roll to the back of his head, smelling salt, stretcher, gas mask. I'm like, bro, what is going on here? Like, so, yeah, so I don't know. I'm going to go Schnell, but yeah, I ain't betting on this one.
Well, you said put emphasis on the odds. And right now on the screen, it shows minus 185 for Schnell. When I last looked, Schnell was like over minus 200, right? And I think that's a crazy price for Matt Schnell. Like, respect to the guy, like, talented dude, love watching him fight. And I love that he just goes balls to the wall despite being dropped, knocked out, losing that way because of fighting that way enough times. But for you to put that kind of price tag on him, that is literally the worst price you would have ever gotten on Matt Schnell in the UFC. And it's the worst price you'll ever get on Matt Schnell in the UFC. I like the value on Jimmy Flick. I think that if the fight hits the mat at all, Jimmy Flick is going to be a little bit better when the fight hits the mat. I like that he's just aggressively looking for the submissions. And for Matt Schnell, and I know Jimmy Flick is not known for having a good chin, right? Most of those losses coming by knockout, not knocking out anybody himself. Matt Schnell's cleaner. He throws better hands. He should land in combination at will if they spend too much time on the feet. But Matt Schnell hasn't knocked anybody out in nearly 10 years, right? It's been a very, very long time. And even when he has landed cleanly on guys, sometimes they get stunned, sometimes they get wobbled, but he's not really crushing anybody with his power. So I think that Jimmy Flick is very live here. I think that the fight is going to get to the mat at some point. I think Matt Schnell's confident in his ability to stay safe on the mat, work his own jiu-jitsu, possibly look for takedowns. But I think that would be a mistake here. I think that Jimmy Flick is going to end up catching him with something. The line's just too wide. So I would not recommend you bet Matt Schnell or put him in your parlays. But if you were to take some action on this, Jimmy Flick at plus money, I'll take it. Why not?
I'm sure all the unders and fight doesn't go the distance are juiced out of their minds,
yeah,
right?
Probably.
Yeah, okay. Not even worth talking about then. Hey, if someone in the comments, if I'm wrong about that, let me know. We'll revisit. But we're assuming that, yeah. Anyways, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Evan Elder, he's 9-2, taking on Gage Young, who's also 9-2. Currently, they got it Evan Elder minus 195. The comeback on Gage Young is plus 170. I love both these kids, man. You know, Evan Elder comes into the UFC super young, paid some dues, man. I like that first fight up a weight class. You know, you could tell he was badly outsized, but he fought his ass off. Then the next fight against Nazim Sadikov, he was up 2-0. Bullshit cut stoppage. Look, I know the cut was gruesome. I'm not debating that whatsoever. But what I'm also not debating is if you would have asked Evan Elder, hey, can you continue? You would have been like, fuck yeah, I can continue. Sure. You know what I'm saying? I'm up 2-0. Like, let's go finish this fight. And he would have either won a decision or, I don't know, maybe Nazim comes back and gets a comeback KO. But the way he was trending, it looked like Elder was on his way to winning a decision. But regardless, good experience for him. The Gennaro Valdez fight, you know, he actually had to overcome some stuff. You know, he got dropped in that fight, overcame some things. But these are the experiences you need as like a young kid who's, you know, making a name for himself in the UFC. And on the other side with Gage Young, I love this kid too. You know, I went back and I watched my Contender Series breakdown to see what my thoughts were on Gage Young going into that Quinlan Salkild fight, right? And I was like, bro, like Quinlan Salkild and Gage Young are both UFC ready right now. I was saying stuff like, you bring Quinlan Salkild and Gage Young into the UFC right now, I think both those guys could come out here and beat someone like a John Makdessi off the rib. That's how good I think these guys are. Now, obviously, we got to mention the short notice for Young, but to his credit, Kunath, this guy is from Kansas City, so you're not going to have to deal with any flight, any jet lag, any bullshit. This guy was already training for a fight, and this guy's a fucking stud. So as much as I like Elder, and let me say this, Elder's original opponent, you know, you remember that Ahmed Hazanzada piece of shit guy?
Piece of garbage, yeah.
Total piece of trash. If y'all don't know why I'm saying that, look it up and you'll understand why. It's not because I don't just call fighters names. Like, this is not about fighting. Okay. So just look it up why I said that. But take how much of a scumbag Hazanzada is aside and just break down how that matchup with him and Elder was going to go. Elder was going to starch that man.
Evan Elder would have killed him.
Elder was going to launch that man's head into the 5th row.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah. So it's like, and I saw some people being like, I wish they would have still let him fight on the card. Bro, what? You want to see, like, even though Elder was going to starch him, you want to see the UFC pay this guy $10K? Fuck that. Let him take his ass whooping in prison. But back to this matchup, man. It's tough. Like, I lean Elder because he's had the full camp and he's had more UFC fights. But like, Gage Young is not a slouch, man. Gage Young belongs in the UFC. I can't fault anyone for taking a shot here. So I'm still collecting my thoughts on this. As a pure pick, sure, I'll go with Elder. But let me take some more time on this one and see where I'm at Friday on weigh-ins. You never know, because I am high on Gage Young. I like Elder too, but price is everything when it comes to betting, and I think this is a closely matched fight. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I love the piece about the Sal Killed and G Money fight, because I thought the same thing. You don't always get that on Contender Series. Like sometimes you'll get like a Kevin Vallejos, Jean Silva, and you'll get a G Money and Quill and Sal Killed, and then you'll get some guys who it's like it's crazy that they even made it to the show, and that's kind of more often than not the case. But I thought the same thing about Gage Young, and I think not only was he local, so it was easy for them to make the call, but he had to be on the short list of guys that they were willing to call if they needed something like this, because the dude is talented, tough as nails, hits like a truck. And I think Evan Elder is like sneaky, one of the most entertaining fighters in the division. Like this dude comes to fight. You watch a Geronimo Valdez fight, the boxing, he just walks him down. Everything's tight, crisp, throws in combination, good chin. Even though he got dropped, I'm pretty sure he got dropped and then dropped Geronimo Valdez later in the round, right? Against Darius Flowers. Darius Flowers was talking all this shit and he was getting touched up over and over and over again. Evan Elder comes to fight. He comes to bang. And I think G Money, like a lot of the same things could be said about him. Here's my thing with it, and you touched on it before. It's about odds, right? Do you think either of these guys are getting knocked out? I think probably not. I think it's going to be a banger of a fight. I think it's going to be close. If the crowd finds out that this guy is local before the fight and they start getting on his side and they start rooting for him, and when he's landing, they're giving that pop, I think that can sway the judges a little bit. I think the rounds are going to be very, very hard to score, Dan. I think the judges are going to be in a tight spot. It's going to be one of those fights where the commentary team's like, I'd hate to be a judge because both these guys are doing so well. And for that reason, I'll just take the value on the underdog. I think G Money's a great bet here. On full camp, I think he would be a phenomenal bet. Not as good right now, but I think it's going to be a very close fight because both guys are bringing the same thing to the table. So why not take the shot on the dog money?
Very, very convincing argument. Now, next up it's actually in the featherweight division, but it's two bantamweights.
Yeah.
We got Chris Gutierrez. He's 21-5-2, taking on John Castaneda, who's 21-7. Currently, they got it. Chris Gutierrez -140. The comeback on Castaneda +120. Castaneda has like been booked to fight like 4 times in like the last however many months. The Douglas Silva de Andrade fight, the Gutierrez fight before, the Gutierrez fight again. I thought there was another one in there, maybe not. So damn, that many weight cuts in very short time. And I get it. This is at 45, not 35, but like, if you think he walks at 45, I'm sorry, but you're mistaken. He's still absolutely going to cut weight here. And then with Gutierrez, he's already a big 35. He's going to be big at 45 too. And let me say this. So like, yeah, John Castaneda, probably the more well-rounded guy in terms of like, he's more of like an all-around type guy, whereas like he's a jack of all trades, right? Like decent everywhere, nothing special anywhere, right? Whereas yep. Chris Gutierrez, maybe a little bit less well-rounded, but like he's a specialist and his specialty is serious. Best leg kicking game in the bantamweight division, besides, well, actually now it's the best. Back in the day, well, fuck, Pedro Munoz did beat him, so I guess we can say Pedro Munoz, but like Pedro's like a fight or two away from retirement. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Where Gutierrez is going to be in the UFC a couple more years, so I'll say Gutierrez is the hardest kicker in the bantamweight division. One of them at least.
One of them for sure.
For sure. Like Cody Dern fought him on like 4-day notice, and he told me that like when he got kicked by this guy, and I'm not even talking about shin, I'm talking about foot. He said it was like getting hit with a baseball bat. He said like a week later, he still like was having trouble walking. That's how hard this guy kicks. Wow. But that being said, man, if you look at John Castaneda's defense, leg strike defense metrics, they're terrible. This guy doesn't check leg kicks.
That's not good. That's a recipe for disaster.
Whether we're talking the Nathaniel Wood fight, which was his debut, or most recently against Daniel Marcos, or the Willie Cat fight. Like anytime people throw leg kicks at this man, just look at the numbers. It's all on there. This guy rarely blocks leg kicks. That is not going to be good here. And I just don't think he's impactful enough to because I know that Chris likes to run around a lot. He's kind of evasive, kind of likes to avoid the fight. But I don't think that like Castaneda is intimidating enough to make him really fear what's going on. I wouldn't be surprised if Chris was the aggressor in this fight. But bottom line, I think his kick's going to make the difference. And for that reason, I'm going to pick him to probably win a decision here.
Yeah, I thought Castaneda had a really nice matchup against D Silva 40 years old, right? I think he would have been able to just do a little bit more, keep a higher level of activity. And then when D Silva pulled out and they swapped El Guapo in, I was like, oh, this is easily Chris Gutierrez. And I think them being at 145 pounds is even better for Chris Gutierrez than it is for Castaneda, especially because, like you said, he did have to cut weight. Chris Gutierrez wasn't cutting to 35 and then having to cut to 40, like, what was it, a week later or something like that?
A week later, literally.
Yeah. So now a couple weeks later, you have them rebooked. So again, it's another weight cut. And when you're in training camp, you're peaking, right? You peak physically. So, and Chris Gutierrez was in shape, but he wasn't in training camp. He wasn't preparing for a specific opponent. So I feel like Chris Gutierrez physically is going to be in a better place than John Castaneda. And you hit the nail right on the head, man, with those leg kicks. Like, he's going to chop him down early, often. That's what his whole game is built on. I think by the third round, Castaneda is going to have a real hard time moving on that lead leg. Like, I don't want to make too much of it, like how, like you see a guy get hit with one leg kick in the first round and Joe Rogan's like, he's compromised. Oh no, he's not going to be able to move again, right? But Chris Gutierrez, like you said, it's just a different kind of power when he's landing below the hip. So I think that he's going to chop him down. I think Castaneda is going to have a hard time catching him. He's going to do a lot of chasing, and Chris Gutierrez just lateral movement, jab, cross, leg kick his way to a decision win. I think this goes the full 15. You would agree, right?
Yeah, most likely. But I mean, a leg kick TKO won't be the most surprising thing in the world, but I agree. Probably close decision. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Damon Blackshear. He's 16-7, taking on Alateng Heili, who's 17-9 currently. They got it. Blackshear minus 460. The comeback on Alateng Heili is plus 360. Yeah, I obviously understand why Damon's favorite here, but since he's minus 460, we do have to nitpick because he's minus 460. It's not like we're talking about a pick 'em. All right. Well, what's Heili Alateng's most likely path to victory? Probably some kind of decision, right? And stay on the outside, stuffing takedowns, kind of just like low output decision, like he always does. Well, Damon Blackshear's 3-6 lifetime when fights go to decision, including losses to guys like Chris Moutinho. Just saying. So I have to say this when we're dealing with a minus 460.
Do you remember the Mario Bautista fight that he took on a week's notice after beating Jose Johnson?
Yeah, he looked amazing in that fight.
Do you think he won or you think he lost? I thought he won.
I don't know. I just thought he performed really well.
Sure, that's fair.
I thought he slowed down at the end, and Mario's like a cardio machine. So, but I thought the early going, I thought he won the first round. Mm-hmm. After that, I'm not sure. But either way, like, regardless of result, I thought it was a great performance. And I thought that, I'm glad you brought that up because the volume he landed in that fight is more volume than Heili Alateng has landed in any fight ever in the UFC, right? It's just that with Damon, from time to time, there's going to be sketchy moments. That last fight against Gibson, until the end, oh my God, it was like, damn, is Damon about to get finished here? And then there's these other fights where it's like, I want to just see a little bit more umph. I want to see, like, he's so talented, man. He's so experienced. Like, he's got such physical attributes. I just want to see more dominance from Blackshear. And I think he's got a great opponent to do that with here because obviously, physically speaking, Alateng's outmatched. And then just skills-wise, Alateng's outmatched. But, like, can I trust the IQ of Blackshear to get it done here? And when's the last time Alateng, like, got submitted? He doesn't really get finished like that. Maybe, like, pre-UFC. Because I remember that fight against Casey Kenny where his body was getting destroyed with kicks, and the dude, like, had zero quit in him. He's very, very tough, man.
Super tough.
So the last time he got finished was actually by Kai Asakura in 2017. He got knocked out. Prior to that, it's been since 2015. So this dude, Alateng Heili, is very, very tough to finish. Yeah, look, I'm going to go Blackshear. It doesn't take a genius to pick a near minus 500. It's just that when he's had so many sketchy moments, I have concerns at a price like this. That's just the bottom line. But yeah, it's a very talented guy versus an average guy. Give me the talented guy, but proceed with caution at this price.
Yeah, I think Blackshear can finish him. I think he could win by submission. He has had those dicey moments, but I think if he does get this guy on the mat and is able to control him for a little while, get to his spot, I think he can find a submission here. Even against Cody Gibson, like it was looking grim at points, but I just felt as though like he's gonna figure it out at some point. He ultimately did. The one thing that gives me pause is and I know he's not fighting anybody of this caliber this week, but how Montel Jackson just starched him, like I think with like the first clean punch that he landed. Oh, oh.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I know I'm frozen, but can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, but is my picture frozen for you? It is for me.
Your picture is frozen for me, yeah.
Okay. Why don't you just keep talking and I'll figure my shit out, okay?
Sure. But I just think that like it's not like Montel Jackson. He's not going to get one tapped. Oh, I got this orange. Oh, there we go. I think that he's going to go out there. I think he gets Alateng Heili down to the mat, just controls him, and then probably finds a submission in like the second round. I don't think he does it right away. I think he's going to have to work him a little bit when they get to the mat. But I think Damon Blackshear at this price, if you want to take the money line and parlay it, I think that's fine. But I would take him by submission. I don't know what the line is off the top of my head, but Damon Blackshear by submission would not surprise me one bit.
Check. Everything
You're
good?
Back. You're back.
Great. Okay. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Cameron Saaiman. He's 9-2, welcoming the newcomer Malcolm the Machine Wellmaker, who's 8-0 to the UFC currently. They got it. Malcolm Wellmaker -115 with it's a pick him with a slight lean on Wellmaker, and Cameron Saaiman is -105. I got a lot to say about this fight, but I'd like to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, I mean, if we see Cameron Saaiman fight the way that he always fights, and we see Malcolm Wellmaker fight the way that he always fights, I think Malcolm Wellmaker punishes him early, often, and knocks him out. Like Cameron Saaiman, he fights like a young dude, like who probably beats people up in the gym like regularly, like caution to the wind, his chin is way up in the air. And the one time we did see him in the UFC fight somebody with some serious pop, like Peyton Talbot, he was completely outgunned. Like he was getting wobbled, he was getting dropped. Now, no shortage of heart. Like the dude is you have to kill him, right? But I think defensively he's real irresponsible. And I don't know if that's like a theme in that gym, because Dricus du Plessis, like the memes are like Dricus is gonna hit you with the why I oughta. Like he's gonna do just a bunch of wacky, goofy stuff. Yeah. But Cameron Saaiman, I think he's just a little bit too hittable. Now he might be in the lab. It's been a while, long enough since the Peyton Talbot fight. He's a young guy, so I'm assuming he's improving at a rapid rate. But Malcolm Wellmaker, he knows how to place his shots really well. Like that guy in Contender Series, he caught him right behind the ear, right above the ear, and dropped him forward, like falling forward while he was moving back. You don't do that unless you've got some serious precision. And I think he's a little bit more polished. 30 years old, long amateur career, long enough pro career, knocking guys out. I'm surprised the line is this close. Maybe it's the UFC debut that's kind of keeping it in check. But I love Malcolm Wellmaker at this price. I think that he's going to light Cameron Saaiman up, and I'm sure you probably feel the same.
It warms my heart to hear that. I don't have to debate you on this one. Listen, man, I'm very, very biased. I'll let y'all know that. But listen, when I predict the guy's going to make it to the UFC, 9 times out of 10, I'm right. And I was right about this one. I used to do commentary for my local Southeast promotion called the NFC back in the day. And I think in 2018, I was doing commentary, and there was this amateur kickboxing fight between Ramondo Scott, who was a kid who named King Assassin, who had really made a name for himself in the Atlanta scene. And he was taking on this kid that I'd never even heard of named Malcolm Wellmaker, right? And we're talking big ass gloves. We're talking about headgear on, right? And when you see the reactions that Malcolm Wellmaker got with big gloves and headgear, I'm talking about chicken dances. I'm talking about starching fools. I'm talking about the whole bit. So the NFC told me back then, because that was like a prelim amateur fight. Like they got headgear and big gloves, right? Like, and shin guards, NFC had told me like, hey man, only interview, the main event, the co-main event, like a pro that here and there that really stands out, because you know how these fighters they get on the mic and they start screaming. The mic is right here. They're talking over there. No one can hear that, all that kind of stuff. They don't want to deal with that. Right. But when I saw what Malcolm Wellmaker did to this kid, I was like, fuck that. I'm interviewing this kid right here, right
Respect.
now. And he stood out. And, we developed a friendship ever since then. But so every time, local shows would come up, I'd be like, hey, when's Malcolm Wellmaker fighting? When's Malcolm Wellmaker fighting? And like, because he really, really stood out. The guys that always stood out from the NFC scene that I predicted would make it to the UFC, Jared Gooden. I never predicted that he'd be like a top 15 guy. I just said he'd make it to the UFC. And I said Cody Durden would make it to the UFC. He ended up making it to the top 15. Well, I said a long ass time ago when this guy was an amateur that Malcolm Wellmaker would make it to the UFC. So 9 times out of 10, when I say that, I'm right. I know there's been a couple guys I've been.
Imagine you could bet on that. Imagine you could get some odds on that.
That'd be amazing. But listen, as far as how these guys match up, I want to give Cameron Saaiman a lot of credit. You said he fights like a kid. Guess what? He's 24 years old. He is a kid.
He is a little baby.
One thing I really like about Cameron Saaiman is he's got insane heart. He's a real fighter. His kicking game is phenomenal. He trains with Dricus du Plessis, and he's one of these guys, like I said, he's only 24 right now. Dude, when he's like 26, 27, 28, look out for Cameron Saaiman. I think he's got a very, very bright future. And I got so much respect for his style, take one to give one. And I love the take one to give one style. I'm a huge fan of that. It's just like, don't do that against Malcolm, because Malcolm, you mentioned the insane power. Like I mentioned the insane power, headgear, big gloves, you're dropping, wobbling guy. Like, yeah. Okay. So now talk about 4-ounce gloves, right? And you see his regional footage. It's like, but more important than the power, because there's different kind of power punchers. This is one of those slick power punchers, like really nice to watch footwork, swag in there, hands
super
down.
Confident.
Oh my God.
Contender series, he was.
The confidence is through the roof.
And also turning his head.
When this is over, if y'all haven't checked this out, go to my YouTube channel, click the live tab, check out my exclusive interview with Malcolm Wellmaker. We sit down for over an hour. You get to know the guy, like really get to know him, hear his personality. Like he's an incredible guy, but man, so slick. I love his defense. I know from time to time you got to be worried about the hands down. Like, when he's 35 and 36 and the reflexes start to slow down, that's when I'm gonna be worried. But at 30 years old, I don't think people are going to really make him pay for it now. And his counters are just so good. He's got this nasty lead leg high kick he likes to go to, stabbing front kicks. You try to take this guy down, he's popping right back up, man. And then people will bring up how like, oh, but he went to a split decision with a bum like, 3 years ago when he was 3-0. First of all, how the fuck was that a split decision? Second of all, both him and that opponent were listed at 5'11". Malcolm shows up to the weigh-in, Buddy's towering over him. Like Cameron Saaiman ain't no 6'1", bantamweight. And then the other fight, the Taylor Moore fight, that was a majority decision. First of all, Malcolm went 5 rounds on his regional scene, so he's already got 5-round experience. How the fuck was that a majority decision, bro? First round, Malcolm's dropping the guy, almost finishes him. I had a 50-45. I thought he won every round of that fight, man. Like, and that was against the Contender Series vet. So, yeah, I don't know what people are saying, but I know what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is that Malcolm Wellmaker is going to come out here and starch Cameron Saaiman and introduce himself as a potential future star in the division, in the sport. And all respect to Cameron Saaiman, I think he will be back. And I can't wait to see what Saaiman looks like. When he's 26, 27, 28, like I said, but he's a kid and he's fighting a grown-ass man. And I think that's going to show. So give me Malcolm Wellmaker for the dub in his UFC debut. Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Jaqueline Amorim. She's 9-1, taking on Poliana Viana, who's 13-7. Currently, they got it Jaqueline Amorim -800. The comeback on Viana +550. Do you have groundbreaking info on a -800 versus +550 matchup?
No, I think that Jaqueline Amorim gets 1 takedown per round and wins the fight. Poliana Viana very comfortable and confident with her jiu-jitsu off her back. Not somebody that she's going to be submitting, I don't think. Jaqueline Amorim, it should make it look easy in top position, stay safe, and just kind of ride it out. She's going to be looking for submissions as well. I don't think she submits Viana here. I think it's just going to be a lot of control time. It's going to be a slow pace. I think on the feet, if we want to nitpick, not even nitpicking, but just I think Viana has a little bit more to offer on the feet. I think if they strike for extended periods of time, Viana might get the better of the exchanges. Not really fight-ending sequences coming from Viana in this fight, but I do think that she'll be able to win some of those striking exchanges. But I'm going to take Jaqueline Amorim at -800 to get it done. I think that she's just going to be able to get her down whenever she wants, stay on top for however she wants, and that's pretty much it.
Listen, man, I'm a Jaqueline Amorim believer, man. Like, I don't care what anyone's saying. Oh, she's a fraud. She has 1 round of cardio. Guys, what you have to understand, another one of these fighters comes into the UFC, 6-0, barely any experience, and all these people she's fighting, she's running through them in the first round. And I'm not just talking, with her submission ability. She was starching girls with punches, man. And, you come to the UFC, you see what Sam Hughes does to all these young prospects, man. Sam Hughes is a serious test. And in that first round, man, she almost got choked out, but listen, she, kind of got grabbing inside the gloves a little bit. No big deal. Listen, man, do what you got to do. I'm not going to hold it against her, but I think that was a very valuable lesson for Jaqueline Amorim to know that, hey, not everyone's going to get finished in the first round by you. People are going to fight dirty. You're going to have to overcome that stuff. I remember, not to compare myself to anything, but I remember, one of my most recent jiu-jitsu competitions, I think it was my first one at purple belt, and I went up against this Gracie Baja guy. And, I've never considered that someone would try dirty tactics on me in a jiu-jitsu match. I just felt like, hey, slap hands, bump, we grapple, and that's that, right? And like this Gracie Baja dude, like, was grabbing fingers, was shouting at the ref to fake advantages, was doing all kinds of shit. So
wow, really?
That taught me, like, okay, you're gonna have to deal with some dirty ass motherfuckers when you get in there, and you just have to have a level head, because at the time I wasn't used to that. So I was like, ref, he's grabbing my fingers, but like, now I'd be a little bit more calm in that situation. Like, oh, I know what you're trying to do, motherfucker. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because with Amorim, she had to go through that. She had to learn that, hey, people are going to cheat against you. People aren't just going to tap to your first attempt, So to go those next 2 rounds and they weren't the best look, hey, that's how you go back to the drawing board as less than 10 pro fights. Now you come back. Now you're doing your thing. And I love the direction that she's been going. And man, people want to cry that she was cheating against Vanessa Demopoulos. Listen, did she hook the glove? Yes, but
yeah,
she did. but she didn't armbar the glove she hooked. She armbarred the other arm. So, as far as I'm concerned, that was a lapse of judgment in Vanessa Demopoulos. Instead of crying to the ref, how about you try to escape that armbar? So I disagree with people on that one bigly. But that being said, here, look, Viana is dangerous, man. She got a couple first round finishes, and if people are worried about Amorim being the one that gasses late, I don't know about all that, man. I don't know about all that. I think that that Pollyanna is the one that needs to get it done early. And I have a very hard time seeing her do that against someone with these jiu-jitsu credentials. Interestingly enough, I heard a rumor that Viana might have been a former Brazilian jiu-jitsu world champion. I don't know the validity to that, but what I do know is Amorim is levels above her there. And I think Amorim's going to, despite being a -800 favorite, is going to have a bit of a coming out party, extend that win streak, and introduce yourself as one of these people that is going to be fighting fringe top 15 fighters moving forward. So, yeah.
I think she's better for the Sam Hughes fight as well. I think if she choked Sam Hughes out in the first round, it would have been great. She probably would have felt good about herself, but having gone through that, she's better because of it. No doubt.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like, that was just an example of paying your dues and, crushing grapes. So now hopefully she drinks some wine. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Roberto Romero. He's 8-4, taking on Timmy Kuwamba, who's 8-3. Currently, they got it Romero -125. The comeback on Kuwamba is +105. This is what I like to call recency bias. Reason being is this is what we call Steve Urseg. This is what we call, Gary having one moment against Shafkat, and now everyone blows it out of proportion. It's like Romero did well against Onama for a couple minutes, and then he completely fell off a cliff, and now everyone's acting like, oh man, this is a real prospect. No, he's not. This guy wasn't even supposed to be in the UFC. Onama had a different opponent. They call this kid up on short notice. Hey, he did good early, and then ran out of options, had no more ideas. And then what? Kuwamba, he's a kid, he had a very tough fight on Contender Series against Vogel, who's probably the top Canadian, either featherweight or bantamweight prospect. Then he had a fight against Balagioki. It was like 8-1 versus 8-1, two prospects, but it was up at 55s. Drops back to featherweight, gets one of the bigger featherweights, kind of a vet in Almeida. And it was good early until he got hurt. But I think this is a big step down in competition for Kuwamba compared to those guys. I know Romero had a little success early against Onama. I feel like a lot of people, like Onama's kind of defensively irresponsible at times, man. So people are going to overblow what Romero did, kind of like Pantoja. Pantoja is an incredible fighter. He's a champion, but Pantoja's style with all the back takes is so taxing that he actually loses rounds to guys that he's way better than because he gasses out in fights. That's just the bottom line, man. So with Romero, I got big questions about his fight IQ. You go out there, you drop David Onama. Hey, 2 more follow-ups. You're going to come out here and get the biggest upset of the year. Yep. Instead, he opts to take the back of Onama. You ain't choking out no David Onama. David Onama's as tough as they come. And then, like I was talking about earlier, Onama drops him, and then he doesn't try to take no back. He goes out there with some vicious follow-up shots, almost finishes the fight. That's what the judges see last, and that's why he unanimously won the first round. Then after that, he had nothing left. With Kuwamba, I actually think Kuwamba is a lot more technically sound than this kid. Like, I think Romero's more of a tough, strong, gritty Mexican brawler, but nothing special. Not that Kuwamba's anything special, but I just think Kuwamba's a lot more technically sound, better defense, more options. I'm going to take Kuwamba for the upset here to get this first UFC win.
There you go. Taking him at plus money. I like that. I don't have a hard stance on this fight, but I do lean Romero. I get that Timmy Kuwamba's been dealt a kind of a tough hand, Vogel. Then he's got Balagioki, who was supposed to blow the doors off of him, right? That was supposed to happen. And Timmy Kuwamba gave a good account of himself in that fight. Lucas Almeida, I think pretty highly of Lucas Almeida, being that big body at featherweight, good Muay Thai, hits really hard. I don't know if it was the danger coming back his way or if that's just how he's going to go out there and fight these guys. But what bothered me in those fights with Timmy Kuwamba is he just didn't throw enough. He was super low output. And if he is going to try to be technically sound and outpoint Romero and try to lead the dance, but almost have like a pretty fight, I feel like he's in trouble. I think Romero's kind of that junkyard dog that can just look like he's winning, like have bigger moments because he's the aggressor, because he's fighting with a bit more tenacity and maybe steal the rounds as a result. He's tough as nails as well. And you mentioned like, you drop David Onama and then you jump on his back. You're not choking out David Onama. Not many guys are, but maybe he doesn't know that, right? Because he did get the short notice call, right? But if he drops Timmy Kuwamba and gets on his back, it might be a little bit different. I don't have a hard stance. Like I don't have a hard lean, but I do think that I would lean Romero in this fight ever so slightly, just because I'm not thrilled with what I've seen from Timmy Kuwamba. And I think that Romero's got a little bit more aggression when he's in there.
And last but not least, in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Chelsea Chandler. She's 6-3, taking on Jocelyn Edwards, who's 14-6. Damn, I didn't realize the experience difference was that wide. And the odds are wide as well. Edwards minus 280, the comeback on Chandler's plus 240. Edwards, obviously the technical acumen on the feet on a completely different level than Chandler, big kicks. And also, although her takedown defense and get-up game have always been criticized, I got to admit, they're getting better. It's getting better. Look, obviously, it still needs work, but it's getting better. With Chelsea Chandler, I kind of view her as more of a brute, not much technique, but like she's down to bite down and get in there, get dirty. And she's physical. She's big for the weight class, so she can use her size at times. You know what she kind of reminds me of? I don't mean any disrespect by this. You ever seen the movie Matilda?
I saw you say Miss Trunchbull. And
dude, she reminds me of the bully in Matilda. Like she's like straight up Miss Trunchbull. Now I saw a recent picture of Chelsea, and I know Chelsea's a lot younger. I don't mean any disrespect by that. We're just trying to be funny. She's slimmed down a lot, so she don't look like her no more. But when she first came to the UFC, I was like, is that Miss Trunchbull? Like, what's going on here? But am I gonna be surprised if I see Edwards on her back from time to time? No, I'm not. But I just think Edwards is paid more dues. Inside and outside the octagon, is going to dictate the pace, has more ways to win. Just don't fucking get stalled out. And I think you win this fight. So I'm going to go Edwards here.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we have fight of the year candidate on our hands. I think that Jocelyn Rocky Edwards is going to outpoint her. I think that she's going to chop her down with the leg kicks. I think she's going to throw that 1-2 down the middle, maybe start throwing that body kick as well. I think you hit the nail on the head with Chelsea Chandler kind of being more of a brute. Now, Chelsea Chandler, if she does get on top of her, I think that Edwards would have some trouble getting back up to her feet. Like, that's a big, strong lady on top of you, and I think that Edwards would have trouble. I think that Chandler can land some decent ground and pound, but I think overall the better fighter, the more experienced fighter, is rightfully favored here. This is one of those situations where there's money to be made on women's MMA. You might not make a ton because the odds aren't great, but money to be made on women's MMA taking her by decision, I think makes a lot of sense. And it's just, people are going to overlook it because they're either not going to be tuning in yet, or they're worried about women's MMA and now underdogs just pop up all the time. But I think Edwards by decision is free real estate this week.
I want to bring up a comment by Meatball. So he said double weight miss for this one. I'm glad you said that, Meatball. Reason being is this. Can someone let me know, please? Did the UFC officially get rid of the women's 45-pound division or not? Because the reason I asked that is they didn't. I mean, fuck making these two cut weight. These are habitual weight missers. Make them fight at 145. But if they did get rid of that, then I fucking hope both these hit up the UFC PI and nutritionist and, you know, do what they got to do. Do you know, Kunath, if they got rid of it? Do the fans know if they got rid of it? Like, what's the deal here?
I'm pretty sure they got rid of it. They let Amanda Nunes be the champion in that division so she could wear 2 belts for a really long time. But I don't think there's anybody fighting in that division. Although I'm sure if they opened up 45, Kayla Harrison would be licking her chops.
Yeah. Now, my man, before we get out of here, we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So in your opinion, Kunath, what is the fight to watch for the UFC Kansas City?
So you mean like the one that's going to be the most entertaining?
I mean, doesn't have to be the most boring, but just the fight to watch. Like, if you're telling your friends, besides the main event, hey,
besides the main event, yeah,
do not miss this fight. Which is it?
For me, it's going to be Jimmy Flick, Matt Schnell. That's the one for me.
Why? No, you got to tell us why. Why?
It's not going the distance. Both guys, they're lovably chinny. Like, when you get both guys like that in one fight, anything can happen. I think on the ground, there's going to be a lot of high level scrambles. And I think that we're going to see one of them lose in probably the first round and a half, like the first 7.5 minutes of action. But up until that point, it's going to be all action. I feel like if it does hit the mat, it's going to be like, you know, in the cartoons when the cats come together and it turns into a cloud of dust. I think that's going to happen with them. So cool fight, in my opinion. Flying under the radar, I would assume, for most, but the flyweights getting after it there. I like that a lot.
Yeah, for me, my fight to watch is Randy Brown versus Nick Dalby. Look, you got two vets, one, you know, in Brown, who's in his prime, and Nick Dalby's kind of past his prime, but Dalby has had a late career resurgence. Randy Brown just looking for that consistency that he needs to get into the top 15. And this fight is almost like a crossroads for both fighters. You know, a win here or a loss here for either is massive implications for their future. Not to mention, it should be a hell of a fight. So for that reason, Brown versus Dalby is my fight to watch. Now, Kunath, who is your fighter to watch for UFC KC?
Well, I won't steal yours because I'm pretty sure I know which one it is. So I'm gonna say G Money, Gage Young. Keep an eye out for G Money, Gage Young at plus money, fighting in front of his people. I think that he's gonna make it a dog fight. They're going to go to war. I think he's going to cash as an underdog. And I think he's somebody who really could have made it to the UFC on a loss on Contender Series. I love me some Gage Young this week.
Yeah, well said. For me, you guys know who it is. It's Malcolm the Machine Wellmaker. I mean, listen, guys, I've been scouting this guy since his second amateur kickboxing fight when he was just a kid. He stood out back then. Back then, I was like, wow, this guy's special. I was always asking people, hey, when's Malcolm Wellmaker fighting? How's he doing? How's his progression going? And then you see, there's even a screenshot of me messaging him. Dude, can I read you this? You know, normally, you know, it's not necessarily classy to read private messages, but I thought this one was really, really cool. So back in, I'm scrolling all the way up. Okay. So back in 2018, April 2018, after I had commentated
7 years ago,
back when I had commentated Malcolm Wellmaker's second amateur kickboxing fight. He hadn't even done MMA yet, right? So, basically I tell him I love your style and that they told me not to interview anyone except the main and co-main, but I had to interview you. He was appreciative of that. All right, but here's the part I want you to see. So, so he said, I'll be back better than ever, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, look forward to it. Now, check this out. Then I was like, you ever thought about giving MMA a try? And his response was, yes, sir. It's the goal me and my team are working toward. I've been training my wrestling and BJJ, and once my team gives me the blessing, I'll be pursuing MMA. So I said, great news. Well, fast forward, 2025, this man is making his UFC debut, and he's one of the most exciting bantamweight prospects that we've ever seen. Insane one-punch knockout power, swagger, style, confidence, charisma, aura, and just a badass arsenal of weapons that brutally dispose his opponents, well-rounded skill set. Malcolm the Machine Wellmaker, you're the fighter to watch at UFC KC, my friend. Now, Kunath, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me right here, right now on Half the Battle. Been an absolute pleasure. Last time we spoke was actually on your show when my boy Cody Dern fought Charles Johnson. I know you had me on for that. That was a great show. Yeah. Good to have you on here finally. Keep killing it. Any message for the fans before I get you out of here?
No, I got nothing, but I will send some people your way. I'll go ahead and share this, and I'll show you what the community can do.
That'd be incredible. Yeah. All your supporters. Shout out to all of Kunath's fans and supporters, man. Y'all show me love, or just check out the show. Form your own opinion. If you like it, amazing. If not, just know that I'm passionate about the sport and just trying to bring positivity here, even if you don't like my style. But if you do like my style, I appreciate you and I fuck with you. So you follow my boy Kunath at Kunath MMA. You follow me at Best Fight Picks on Twitter, at Half the Battle HQ on Twitter, at Half the Battle Pod. Excuse me, at Half the Battle Official on YouTube, Half the Battle Pod on Instagram, Half the Battle Podcast on TikTok. How the fuck do I remember all those names? I don't know. Ask you that. But I appreciate y'all, showing me so much support, so much love. It's incredible. Half the Battle is a grassroots show. I don't got no one backing me, no big websites putting out my shit, nothing. It's all house made. Me on the mic, my boy Meticulous with the incredible graphics, and then I have the most amazing guests in the business today. Kunath joining me so gracefully. To the fans, again, I cannot thank y'all enough. It's truly an honor to be doing this many years later, and the best is yet to come. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.